Hi, this is Eliot, your correspondent from the dark side again, with another edition of Basic Bleak. And what you just saw me doing, smashing the dishes, is a form of therapy that actually exists in Japan. And I'm not making this up. You can Google any combination of words, including such as smashing ceramics in Japan. And the reason I was demonstrating this phenomenon to you is that this is where Howard is now. He's in Tokyo smashing dishes, and I didn't really have the forbearance to go to Japan. So I decided to demonstrate what had happened at the very end, or actually in the middle, of Howard and Heather's honeymoon expedition. I'm calling it a honeymoon even though they didn't formally and traditionally tie the knot, as they say. So Howard and Heather flew off to Las Vegas after they had their vows in episodes, 9 and 10 of my series here. And they went there not because they were too lazy to go to actually Venice or Paris, and there are hotels in Las Vegas with those themes. They went there because they love poker, and they'd been watching for many years, each year, the Poker World Series on TV, which takes place each year in Las Vegas. And Howard wanted to participate this year and also hang out with the poker super rock stars that he had been seeing gaming on TV. So he bought in the $10,000 buy-in and very quickly lost it, but he didn't care. He really wanted to hang out with poker superstars. And Heather liked to hang out at the slot machine banks and look around at the people and the glamorous cocktail waitresses and so forth. So one night after the poker tournament was over, it was actually the middle of the night, maybe 1 a.m., 2 a.m., Howard was playing Baccarat and Heather was sitting at one of the slot machine banks. And what you need to know are two things before I tell you what happened then that produced Howard's arrival in Tokyo to smash dishes. Now, there may be some sexual content here. There actually is. I can guarantee it. So get ready, deal with it. Otherwise, turn me off right now. There's two things you need to know. One of them is about Heather, and one of them is about Howard's ex-wife. What you need to know about Heather is that she is very, very shy. She does not like to be naked, and she has her whole adult life, sexual life, had a problem with penises. Many anatomical parts disturb her, even many of her own. And she doesn't like to be naked even when she's all alone, but penises have been a problem for her. Not everyone's, but she needs a lot of coaxing, and she ultimately enjoys having sex with men, except she needs a lot of coaxing. So what we need to know, of course, is that Howard, because Heather is so seldom in the mood, could easily feel rejected by this, even though he knows it's not exactly personal. But Heather doesn't even know if it's not exactly personal. Maybe he's not the right guy for her. He does know the right moves, and he does take his slow time getting her in the mood, and she loves her connection with him, and she loves the companionability she shares with him, even though you may feel he's quite a quirky individual. So you need to know that about Heather going in. And also, when she's had these conversations with girlfriends, many of them share that they feel the same way about male body parts and also about sex, that sometimes they feel very much like they're willing to put up with actual consummate sex just in order to maintain the connection with men to whom that's important. So it's important that you know that about Heather. Also, she and many of her girlfriends have discussed whether or not maybe they're really attracted to women, and at least in Heather's case, she never really did feel that way. She would try on the idea and go, that's not the issue here. And what you need to know about Howard's ex, which I mentioned early on in the Howard vow-taking video, was that he had had an amicable divorce from his ex, who was a fashion editor. But what I had forgotten to mention is that he had told Heather early on when they were discussing their former relationships that his ex, Deirdre, had had tattoos put on her earlobes so that even when she wasn't wearing earrings, her earlobes would look adorned. Okay, so having known that, or now that you know that, Heather is sitting one evening at a slot machine and way across the casino where he can't even be seen is Howard. So while she's sitting at this slot machine, Heather wrote me an email. Way too long for a text. So I want to read you the email because it will explain. Heather writes me. Now Heather is my dear friend. That's how I happen to know all this about she and Howard. She writes, the impossible happened. Actually, two impossible things happened. The probability of either of these things is so low, I don't understand. So I'm sitting at this slot machine when a woman sits down beside me. She was in a strapless denim dress. It was fabulous. A simple knee-length dress with a dropped waistline and a fitted bodice. You know, the kind we both love. Soft faded denim. I turned to her to say how fabulous the dress was when I noticed that she had little stars tattooed on her earlobes. Right? Can you believe this? I asked her if her name was Deirdre, and it was. So of course, it had to be Howard's ex. I was speechless. She said, how did you know my name was Deirdre? I said, I'm just good at those things. I didn't say anything else. I just told her how fabulous her dress was and how I loved the tattooed earlobes. What a brilliant idea. So here's the other impossible thing. While I was sitting beside her, my pelvic floor suddenly tingled, and I felt as though I had had an orgasm. And as you know, I've been faking orgasms with Howard since I don't really care about them. So this spasm was really a shock. Really a shock. I love Howard's desire for me, but I like the idea of having sex with him, or really with anyone, more than actually having the sex. And I didn't tell Deirdre that I was married to her ex, and I didn't tell Howard that night either. And I didn't tell him that I had felt that spasmy just sitting next to her. And honestly, I wondered if this wasn't some perverse form of incest. I think it is, definitely. Anyway, Howard and I slept late the next day, but first thing after waking up, imagery about Deirdre began to unfold. And the imagery had nothing to do with sexual body parts or licking or caressing. I just wanted to nuzzle my head into the curve of her creamy neck and be close to the perfumed curtain of her long, silky hair, which had swung so close to me when she bent down to pick up her purse before she left. So the next morning, Howard and I were having breakfast at the Carson Street Cafe downtown at the Golden Nugget, and I told him I had met Deirdre and how I'd known it was her because of the tattooed earlobes, and he almost choked on his rye toast. It got worse when he asked me what I'd thought of her. Here's where the problem lies, and here's where we're kind of carrying over about the truth not being such a great idea. I know you and I have talked about that. I told him I'd thought of Deirdre sexually that morning. This was not a time to be telling him the truth. I could just have said she was hot and foxy and that her motorcycle boots with bare legs and the strapless denim dress were a fantastic combination. I could have said I totally understood why he'd been so attached to her. Any man would be. I didn't have to say I felt sexually attracted to her. What was I thinking? I just wanted him to know. I wanted to talk to someone about it that I thought would understand. I know I should have emailed you instead. Anyway, especially since I'd had no intention of ever following up with any kind of action about this, what was the point of implanting this information into Howard's mind? Information that was already unsettling to me. That just made two of us unsettled. Anyway, Howard threw his napkin onto the table and his chair squeaked and he pushed it back and he stood up and he marched into the lobby and I sat there not knowing what to do, and then I just jumped up and followed him. My heart was palpitating so fast. He was at the front desk talking to the concierge who was furiously tapping his keyboard, and the next thing I knew, he turned to me and he said, I've checked out and I'm going to Tokyo. And he left. And then he sent me an email telling me he was smashing China. So I'm going to leave you with this information right now. And I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what you'll make of it. But Heather wanted you to know all this. She said it was okay for me to let you know. And so we'll find out maybe in a few more times what happens next. Thanks so much for tuning in again.